The following program is made possible by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
5 Democrats are running for the 13th Senate District seat being vacated by Jerry Hill. One of the 5 candidates, Annie Oliva, is here. The game is politics. The game is on. Okay, welcome to the game. I'm Mark Simon. My partner Kevin Mullen is on assignment. Term limits are forcing Jerry Hill to leave the state Senate. 5 Democrats are running to replace him in the 13th state Senate district, which runs all the way from Brisbane to Sunnyvale, and it has nearly 1 million residents. We have been interviewing all of the candidates. This is our last interview of the 5 candidates. And next week, Kevin and I will be hosting a candidates forum that will also air here on Peninsula TV. Joining us today is Annie Oliva. She has been a member of the City Council in Millbrae was elected in 2013 and re-elected last year, I guess it was, and has been on the she is a realtor and owner of Marshall Realty, a firm founded by her father. Has been a member of the San Mateo County Association of Realtors Board of Directors and also the California Association of Realtors, and is a past president of the board. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I guess we'll start with the question that ought to be in your wheelhouse, which is everybody talks about housing and nobody seems to quite know what to do about it. There's a strong sentiment, certainly in the community that you come from. Let's build more. That seems to be the answer. Is that the answer?
Yes, it's definitely the answer. We need more housing. And Mark, I spent my whole professional life in trying to find people affordable housing. I also have spent my new life, my day job, doing that for my passion of finding first-time home buyers. I think I've put about 600 first-time home buyers into place with all kinds of good programs, down payment assistance programs, and quite frankly, some just, where there's a will, there's a way, and we figure it out. At nighttime, of course, City Council, I was fortunate enough to have some housing projects come to what I would call the opportunity to Millbrae. And that, my nighttime job, I was able to bring my day job into it. I feel very fortunate that I understand the vocabulary of real estate. I understand what the developers' wants and needs are and the needs and wants of the city. So I'm hoping that I can bring that expertise to Sacramento.
Okay, so why aren't we building more housing? And then as a second part of that question, a lot of people who think we're not going to build our way out of this problem. I was just looking at population growth numbers for the peninsula since 1970, and they are much, much bigger, I think, than people realize they are. There just are there's a lot more demand. And so leading back to the first question, is it even possible for us to build enough housing?
Absolutely, it's possible. You look up and down our district, there's a lot of building that is going on. And one thing I'd like to make sure that we address if we talk about housing is transportation. And
we'll get to that in a second, but let's talk about just building up the stock. You know as better than I do, you go from city to city and there are widely varying levels of resistance to the kind of high-level, high-density sort of housing that really makes a dent in this problem.
Sure. So are you speaking about maybe possible incentives to cities that could have incentives to build more housing?
Well, you tell me. I mean, you said you're going to Sacramento and propose some solutions.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of red tape that goes on in the smaller municipalities that should be, looked at, and incentives for them to lower possible fees that come along with all of that. I think that if we looked at CEQA, that might be something that should be somewhat reformed. CEQA is great for the environment, and we should keep it just for that, not to slow down housing projects. CEQA is something the state can do. Locally, the municipalities can do with lowering the rates and the red flag fees that go along with slowing all the projects down. I would probably look to Millbrae as somebody that has been proactive, and what we did there with housing and also putting in some TOT from a hotel that's going to go in there, some commercial base that helps the city as well as helps the housing situation, as well as addresses the problem as we built it right on the transit corridor. In that particular BART location in Millbrae, we even were able to put veterans preferred housing, which is I'm very excited about and very proud to say that we were champions on that. I think we should be a model for a lot of the cities. Redwood City's doing well, South San Francisco's doing well. A lot of the cities have been able to come forward and put in some great projects for more housing.
Well, but one of the things Millbrae had that a lot of other places didn't have was an opportunity in that BART area. There was a large amount of space. It was a transit hub for BART, Caltrain, and the Samtrans system. So you had an opportunity that a lot of other cities aren't going to have. So pick some other city in the district, wherever you want to pick it, that's not Redwood City, which had its own distinctive characteristics. And what you're going to find is a lot of resistance to the level of building that I think you're talking about to really make a dent in the problem.
Sure, I would agree with you. Let's take, like, for instance, Burlingame. Yeah. And what they did, what I think I commend them for what they did with the upzoning on Rollins Road and being able to put some more housing right there. So I think there is definitely customized solutions to each and every city.
So SB 50 was the legislation proposed by State Senator Wiener, who would ideally for you be a colleague, that essentially required cities to approve higher density, higher height limit buildings at and near transit. Did you think that was a good idea? Do you support that?
I like the incentive, but again, I think that each city should have the opportunity to be customized and such. And one of the things that bill did not have anything to deal with any sort of transportation dollars. And if we could work with transportation and housing together, I think that would be a better solution. It also eliminated some of the counties like Marin that were. If we're all going to do it, we're all going to do it. So if it's going to be one size fits all, then everybody's included. And in this case, I'm not so sure that one size fits all is what the solution should be. Now,
you talked about incentives, and you talked about incentives for the builders, like, for example, maybe not such restrictive fees that drive up the cost and slow down the process. What's the incentive for a city? If you don't want to force them, as SB 50 was trying to do, how do you incentivize them when we all know commercial property has a better return for the developer and a better tax base for the city?
Sure, I think that what I'm gonna go back to where I'm so familiar with Millbrae, and we did mixed use. So of course with the mix, we have to be able to be sustainable as a city as well. So when we're able to put the commercial in with the housing, put a hotel near the transit and the housing, then we can address those issues much easier and be able to sustain the whole housing and the people in the city.
Do you see the peninsula as when it comes to building construction for housing, higher and denser?
Yes.
And where would that be?
Near transportation.
Okay. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about transportation in just a second. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back. My partner, Kevin Mullen, is on assignment, as we like to say euphemistically. Annie Oliva is here. She is the Millbrae City Councilwoman running for the 13th Senate District seat to be vacated due to term limits by Jerry Hill. We're talking about housing and transportation. Well, we're talking about housing. And if people aren't talking about housing, they're talking about traffic.
Right.
And the two clearly go hand in hand. One of the things you said on your somewhere on your website is it was time for the internal squabbling to stop over transportation. What do you mean by that?
Internal squabbling? Well, I'm not quite sure if it was under transportation, but I can certainly address that internal squabbling. We've ignored this for too long, and now we're going to pay the price. And transportation has just affected us in so many ways, both environmentally and with housing issues. And I think that when we talk about squabbling, we can't think about our traffic that's causing our environment with greenhouse gas emissions, terrible air, and ruining our planet. Not to mention it's the people that are so cranky after they've been down 101 after a full day's work. But this should not be a partisan issue. This is something that we need to address for our environment on either side of whatever you label yourself. And it's an issue that we shouldn't squabble with parties, because it is about our next generation. And I feel it's so important that by us taking the cars off the road and addressing what is the main issue of climate change, we're going to pass this on to the next generation that is shameless on us. I mean, there's no way in the world that I'm going to sit here and do nothing about this.
So what are you going to do? What
am I going to do? I'm going to join forces, and there's a lot that has been done with they've created a joint power in our district to gain some federal funding. We need to restore the wetlands so that can help with the sea level rise and put barriers in appropriate places and get the cars off the road by putting housing near transportation.
Okay, so basically that means a more robust bus system that people, and rail system that people can rely on.
Absolutely.
And you think that's not happening now?
Well, there's been some trains to nowhere, and I think that's maybe we should probably spend our dollars a little bit wiser and create improve what we have. We need better trains, more frequent trains, cleaner trains, buses, and that last mile is when you take the train to where you're going to go and you need to get home, and that last mile up the hill or the last mile down the hill. So I think that if we create those kind of solutions to transportation, that would be a very good start to.
You mentioned the train to nowhere. It sounds like you're against high-speed rail.
I'm not against the idea, but at this time, I think that when we are, when we have a project that has a good formation, a project that is attainable, a project that's affordable, then of course I would love to see high-speed railroad.
Yeah, but most people are saying that the high-speed rail plan isn't attainable and isn't affordable.
Right.
So we should abandon it?
I would, at this point, I think that there's a lot of other things that we can be focusing on, yes.
Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit. I've been going over your campaign spending reports. Congratulations, you've done very well.
Thank you.
You've referenced your background as a realtor.
Yes.
And your involvement, a lifelong involvement really, because it's a business you grew up around.
Yes, born and raised.
And you've gotten a lot of support from your colleagues in the industry. And on the one hand, that speaks well. These are people who know you, have worked with you, and support you. The real estate business on the peninsula is not without its share of controversy. It's been very actively involved in some political campaigns, also very actively involved in opposing rent control proposals. So first of all, let's start with the rent control cap that's been approved by the voter, by the legislature and signed by the governor. Mm-hmm. What's your position on that? Did you think that was a good idea?
I did not think it was a great idea. First, I want you to know that I would support anything that would support the rights and a good system for any tenant. I mean, I think that, well, first of all, I manage a lot of, I do a lot of property management myself as well. And
rental property.
Yes, yeah. And I would hope that we would look to preserve tenants' rights by not using rent control. I'd like to see where it's worked. I don't understand why we would put into place, after it's been voted down in 5 different cities in our district, why we would put into place something that doesn't work.
I think the answer the answer from people who support rent control, which is distinguished from my own point of view, which is nobody's business, is that the rent increases are killing people. I mean, everywhere you go, you hear stories of renters who get a succession of 5, 8, 10% increases over more than, less than a year. I saw somebody posted something the other day about a great moderate rental opportunity. It was $3,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So it sounds like the status quo isn't fixing the problem either.
So Mark, I'm a little confused on where you took me here, because moderate the price of rentals, yes. Is it $35 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath? As you mentioned, quite possibly that would be market rate. I don't know where it was or what you're speaking about, but I'm not surprised by that price. But when you look to say raising rents, raising rents 10% within a year, shame on that landlord. That's not the way I would represent any landlord. Are there stories out there? Yes, there's bad apples out there. That's not okay. But for the most part, what I see in my business and what I represent and what I think realtors would represent is a good, safe quality of life and an increase in rents that were reasonable to upkeep the property. What you're saying on one hand with the high rents of 35, 38, I'm sorry, I don't remember, 3,800 of 2-bedroom, 1-bath, that's expensive. That's because there's a scarcity. That's because of supply and demand. That's not because of rent control. So being on the field and working it daily, I would probably still stand strong to say that rent control is not going to solve the issue for our tenants. We need more housing. The supply and demand is what's going to determine what the rents are.
Okay, we're going to take another break. Stick around, we'll be right back.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back to the game. I'm Mark Simon. My partner Kevin Mullen is on assignment. We're interviewing 13th Senate District candidate Annie Oliva, a Millbrae City Councilwoman. We were talking a little bit about housing. You referenced again the scarcity, that we need to build more. And that's been one of your sustaining themes throughout this conversation. There's a huge amount of open space in the peninsula. It's part of what people love about the peninsula. But I guess the question is whether or not we could utilize some of that. I mean, I remember seeing T. Jack Foster say if you took just 5% of the open space in San Mateo County, no one would notice the difference except for the explosion in housing stock. What's your view on that?
So I, like you, grew up in this neighborhood, and the quality of life is superior to most anywhere in the world. And I would like to protect that. We definitely need more housing, and I don't think it should be one or the other. I think that we need to preserve our open spaces, yet we need to build more housing and maintain this beautiful quality of life that we have been privy to be raised in.
Well, okay, so that leaves putting higher density, higher buildings someplace like El Camino, and we have really such wide varying standards from one city to the next. San Carlos wouldn't go over 3 stories on a project that I worked on for Samtrans. Redwood City is going 8 stories. And a lot of people point at Redwood City and say, well, we don't want to do that. In Millbrae's case, you're able to go high at the BART station because there's not a lot of residential around it. But a lot of places like El Camino, 1 block in, there is residential, and there will be people who resist high-rise. So when you say it isn't one or the other, well, then where is it?
Well, let's talk about transportation a little bit again, because
Sure.
I really truly believe that we can't talk about housing without talking about transportation. And we have people that are commuting from Tracy right now, And if we had transportation where there were homes that were affordable homes out there, that people that could come into to our area to help us with work that is needed in our neighborhood. Again, transportation and housing all have to work together. I just was talking to somebody that has a business in Burlingame, and they have a hard time finding mechanics. So the mechanics are coming from Modesto and from Tracy every day. We need mechanics. We need those kind of businesses in our neighborhood. And they're proposing to put possible workforce housing in their actual work building. So I think that those kind of creative ideas can help preserve our open space. Back to your question on, can it be both? Yes, we need to preserve our open space, and we don't have to have one or the other. We just have to create new ideas to probably dream up some of these people that have the idea of workforce housing in their actual business. I think that's brilliant.
Do you think cities have height limits that are too restrictive and that there ought to be an opportunity to build higher, essentially up and down the peninsula?
Yes, I think some cities do. Yeah. Yes.
I want to shift gears to, we're talking about housing, talking about homelessness, because I know there were quite some strong statements on your website about homelessness. Tell us, I think everybody agrees it's a problem, especially in San Francisco, but it really is a problem perhaps a little more hidden elsewhere. What would you do about that?
Okay, so homelessness is a very personal issue for me. It's probably one of my greatest passions for going to Sacramento. I felt this call to action, and it's when I see a homeless person, Mark, it could be any. They had a mother, they had a father, they could be a brother or sister. And I say this because my own son has been homeless. And he suffers from addiction and mental health issues. And when addiction brings you down, it brings you all the way down. Mental health issues bring you down, it brings you all the way down. In a society where we live in this beautiful paradise, the homeless people have become part of our landscape. It's not okay. We need to have shelter and care for these people. We know the solutions. We are just doing nothing about it.
Be more specific. What are the solutions?
Well, I have been very fortunate to be able to talk to a couple of the nonprofits, Life Moves and Kaminar. And with some of the research, especially with Kaminar, that has been done, is early detection of trauma and mental illness is definitely something that we need to focus on. At even like the young age of 7 or 8 years old. So I would focus that, I would take it to them, the experts, on what in fact we can do to stop the problem before it becomes such an acute problem of living on the street. People living in tents is not okay.
You and I are of an age where we can recall there was a fairly extensive state system of hospitals, for lack of a better word, that housed a lot of people, that provided ongoing care for them and provided resources. Should we reopen some of those places?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
We need to find the money in the budget to take care of our people. Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned money in the budget. One of the upcoming issues in November of 2020 will be a ballot measure that tries to address what people think is one of the primary inequities of Prop 13, which is that residential buildings, because they roll over and they change ownership, are reassessed, and therefore they're taxed at a higher rate, but the commercial building has not. So this would seek to dramatically increase the amount of taxation on commercial buildings, which have also turned over at a much, much slower rate. Would generate a lot of income, generate a lot of revenue. A lot of it could easily go for the kinds of things you're talking about. What's your view on this split roll proposal?
So I don't support the split roll. I don't want to harm anything to anything that would affect the economy and business people. But yet there are many loopholes, and I would definitely support any reform to the loopholes that anybody's taking advantage of the system to. And that could generate, like you said, more money to the budget, and definitely for things like shelters for homelessness people.
Okay, we're just about done. We got like 30 seconds left. So sort of give us your elevator speech. Why are you running, and why should people vote for you?
So my elevator speech is going to be about the race, if you don't mind. I want to say that there's many great candidates, and voters are going to be presented with very clear choices. And the people of this district deserve nothing less. We have smart and dedicated voters. Here, I really love being out there talking to all these people. They're so thoughtful. And when I go to debates, I sometimes feel like the odd lady out. I guess I feel that way wherever I turn on the cable news as well. We have become so partisan, and I'm not a partisan person at my core. I think we should solve these problems together, and I know that we face terrible threats, and we need to stand together for what's going on in Washington politics. It's undermining health care and threatening our environment. But I try not to make enemies. I try to see fellow Californians as fellow Californians. And we need to put the politics aside and together come with solutions. That is who I am. But as I talk to more and more voters, I think that is who we are.
Annie Oliva, candidate for the 13th Senate District, Millbrae City Councilman, thank you for being here. We'll see you shortly at the Candidates Forum.
Awesome.
I'm Mark Simon. Kevin Mullen is on assignment, so I'm going to wrap it up for us. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on The Game.